one time I was having a hard time and I was like crying upstairs about something. And one of my kids wrote on the fridge, like, I love Christmas and I love mom.
Oh. Welcome to the Connect Method Parenting Podcast, where correction is out, connection is in, and your kids want to listen to you. I'm Andy Martineau, creator of Connect Method Parenting, here to help you stay calm, confident, and connected no matter what. Hey, everybody. What I'm bringing you guys today on the podcast is one of my clients, Mary. She's going to be sharing the impact that Connect Method Parenting has had on her life and on her kids' lives. She's got 6 kids like me, but 2 sets of twins, y'all. 2 sets of twins. So her life is a little crazy and chaotic. She still has little kids all the way up to teens, tweens, teens. And I've had the privilege of working with Mary both one-on-one and inside of my group, the League of Extraordinarily Connected Parents, or just League for short most of the time, because let's be honest, it's kind of a long name. Don't know what I was thinking, but I love it. It's been such an honor working with her because she listens to what I say and implements it. And so I am thrilled to celebrate her wins today that she has created for herself. What she is going to share today will give you a glimpse of what Connect Method Parenting looks like in the wild, in the craziness and the messiness of real life with lots of kids. She often shares genuine, authentic moments that are happening with her littles where they've taken stuff out of the pantry or taken the Sharpie and colored on things that should not be colored, which reminds me so much of the things that were going on with my kids, all the shenanigans they were up to when they were all little, because having 6 kids in 8 years is crazy. So Mary reminds me a lot of me, and she has taken this and implemented it and had wins that she never thought was possible. So lean in, y'all. Listen to what she says, because you can make this happen in your life as well. And I know that what she says is going to inspire you and it's going to bless your life. You're going to want to take some notes. So go grab a piece of paper and a pen. And I want you to know that what Mary is describing today in this episode is possible for you too. There's nothing special about any of us who have experienced amazing parenting success with Connect Method Parenting, except for this fact that we have started learning Connect Method Parenting and have committed to consistently implementing Connect Method Parenting, following simple, doable, science-backed steps that we talk about inside of League all the time, nonstop. That's the only difference. So Connect Method Parenting and the shifts that Mary is going to talk about today, they're available for you too. The only thing that's different between where Mary is and where you are is she has spent years implementing Connect Method Parenting and replacing the typical parenting tools that most of us get handed down, correction, timeouts, punishments, grounding, and replace them with connection, and learned how to set connective limits from a firm and compassionate place, learned how to invest in the relationships with their kids, and learned how to understand what's going on in her brain and her nervous system so that she can come to situations in a regulated state. So you're going to love this. I can't wait for you to listen. And I also want to mention one more thing before we get started. In about a month from now, I'm opening up League again for a new cohort to come in. I'm going to put the link in the show notes, and you can get all the details at connectmethodparenting.com. I've actually got some crazy bonuses if you reserve your spot for the May cohort early. So if you're listening to this in April of 2024, go check that out. If you're not, you can still go check out the website and see what we're offering at the time you're listening to this. All right, let's do this. Mary, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey with Connect Method Parenting with everybody. I'm so excited. I thought maybe we could start first with a little snapshot about what life was like before you started embarking on Connect Method Parenting and all the things that entails. So what was life like with your family?
Very
painful. Hey, that was me too. I was like, this is not working. What did that look like if you were to describe a scene of, Tuesday at 2:00? Like what was happening?
I would get angry at a drop of a hat. I would say like everything was an issue. Everything was a problem. I think the biggest thing was my brain would go to like worst case scenario all the time. It's like, if I don't fix this now, they're going to be XYZ. You know what I mean? Like think of the worst thing possible. And that's where my brain would go every time. So it was very fear-based parenting. Like I had a lot of fear that drove a lot of my reactions. And it caused a lot of fear in my kids. And so then they were
Mm-hmm.
reacting to my fear. Then that led to like more behavior issues because of that, and lots of judgment. And I think the biggest thing is I connected a lot of my kids' behavior to like my value as a mother, and like
Mm-hmm.
whether I was a good mom or not, dependent on the choices my kids were making. So they couldn't make bad choices or they had to be a certain way to almost validate me, which is never helpful because kids
No.
they're not supposed to validate us. That's not their job. But I was making it their job. I wanted it
Get
to be.
it. Yes. Well, I mean, I think that feels so icky if anybody's trying to validate themselves with how we behave. So, of course, our kids feel terrible about it. Yet it seems to be okay in parenting. Or or another way to say it is it seems to be like that is pretty typical in how we decide how good or bad we're doing as a parent is our kids' behavior. Like this
Right.
means I'm failing or this means I'm not failing. Or we'll look at other parents and say the same thing. So,
Right.
totally get
Which would
it.
lead to me being more like, this has to stop. So then I would get more upset and frustrated, and then I would use more punishments, threats to try to control my kid, which would then lead to them actually escalating in
Yeah.
behavior, which was
Yeah.
counterproductive to what I was trying to accomplish. They were not the child
So,
who would give in to my threats. Instead, they're like, I'm going to trick you
hmm
on.
yeah.
So
In hindsight, what a gift, right? But it was so frustrating at the time that they wouldn't give in.
that's funny. I was actually thinking about this conversation today, and I was thinking a big change for me was these situations I now truly see as gifts, whereas before they felt like so heavy and so like I was just like, I don't want this anymore. And now I'm like, these are the best things for me.
That is huge. Tell everybody how many kids you have because I think that's relevant because sometimes we might think, "Oh, that's great, but they have one child and so of course they can get away with this." That's not how many kids you have. So tell us a little bit about ages and how many.
Yeah. Well, I did have one child for a long time, and then we had lots of little kids all at one time. So we have six kids, and ranging from 3 to almost 14, and two sets of twins in the mix. So it's a full house.
It's a full house. It's crazy to think about. I mean, I was in a similar place with just lots of little ones, just boom, 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 boom. So I remember the chaos of that time. But if it works with that many kids, is what I want to say, then it's going to work with any amount. We
Any
can make this
age.
work. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter at any age too. So what led you to think, okay, I got to try something different, and then start exploring options? What was the tipping point?
Desperation.
I
Like
know, right?
nothing was working. Like all the things. I mean, I literally had 40 parenting books. I tried them all. Nothing would really stick. And I still continued to quote unquote mess up. And I
hmm
would beat myself up a lot. And what intrigued me the most about Connect Method Parenting was this idea of getting our kids to want to listen. I was like, that would be amazing. And think of it in my head when you're always like, you could have these dreamy, wonderful relationships. And I just wanted that so bad. And I didn't have that. And I feel like now I can say we're getting closer to that, at least on
hmm
my end. I mean, maybe my kids don't feel the same way, but I feel that about them. So yeah, just
Yeah.
desperation, like nothing. It's just funny because parents, when you talk to other parents, they're like, well, just do this. I'm like, yeah, tried that. That doesn't work. Like, I
Yeah.
would say the gift of my kids is they show me where the faults are in those things. And it forced me to get to a place where I'm like, there has to be something else because none of this is working. And then I remember when when you first started and implementing and just seeing little glimmers of hope and trying these different, like, even working on myself, but also like different changing my mindset of how I even viewed situations. And it would just be like, I'm like, this is actually getting traction compared to all the
hmm
years of like 1, 2, 3 magic and love and logic and all
Yeah.
those classes. I mean, I can't even tell you how many love and logic classes I've taken. And
Yeah, me too. For those listening, so you're in this world where it's not working. You're using all the traditional, I call it Western parenting, behavior modification techniques, which we think is the essence of parenting. We
right,
grow
for
up
sure.
thinking discipline is the essence of parenting, behavior management is the essence of
Hmm.
parenting, and we believe that It's the external things, the external stimuli, either positive or negative, that are going to change behavior. Yet, if that worked, I don't think we'd have any need for parenting books or conversations like this, because our kids would be great, because most of us are pros at handling situations from a corrective, punitive place. So you're in this place, you're trying it. It's Groundhog's Day every day, expecting a different result, not happening again.
I think our kids are so good at showing us or proving to us that we can't control them. That's where I'm saying, that's where I felt like was my kids were showing me, like, I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do. And I had to find a way to get at peace with that. And controlling them wasn't actually solving it. It was making it worse.
If you're new to Connect Method Parenting, I have a great way for you to get started. I've created a free course that covers some of the biggest challenges parents are facing and how Connect Method Parenting solves them. In an hour, we're going to talk about why parenting is so hard, how to get your kids to want to listen to you, how to stop yelling and losing your cool, and become that calm, confident, connected parent for good. It's the fastest way to get started using connection as your go-to tool for influencing and impacting your kids. Go to cmp.works/course to get instant access today. Yeah, we see that reality enough that we then just decide, I've got to do something else. But what was the scariest thing about exploring other options? So you hear me talk about Connect Method Parenting, and we can connect and build relationship, and they're going to want to listen to us, which I love you brought that out, because it is so different to get our kids to want to listen to us versus get them to listen to us, which can be done through control and manipulation, which can work from time to time, which is why it's so confusing for our brains. But what was the biggest fear stepping into Connect Method Parenting when you started to work with me?
I think it was the fear that I wasn't capable, like I couldn't sustain it, or it was too good to be true. I remember you sharing one time, like, it's possible. And I just had to hold on to that hope because, like I said, I get glimmers of it working, but I didn't have enough evidence yet. And I just had to trust what you were saying. Like, it could be possible. Like, it was possible to get to that place where things weren't triggering me like they used to. And the fear of maybe not being able to do that or not knowing how to do that was always lingering.
Or that it wouldn't work for your kids, maybe. That's something I get too. Or did you not feel that?
I didn't feel like it didn't work for my kids because I feel like, if anything, it was the first time doing stuff that I felt like was working for
that's
them.
so interesting.
And I think that's what the gift of my kids has given me, was showing me there was a better way, and it's a better way. And the way I was going with all the books and all the parenting classes, the focusing on the external and lectures, and it just escalated the behaviors. But once I started making effort towards connection, the behavior started to go the opposite way for me. And that was a gift because it gave me a lot of hope in it. Okay, another one was the cost. Working one-on-one with you was kind of scary, but in my mind, I just felt like it didn't even matter anymore because I will do anything for my kids. And what I was doing wasn't working, and I had to find, I was so desperate because what I was doing, it wasn't working. The only way I can explain it is kind of how I said before, is just your kids show you that you can't control them, and they're going to make the choices they're going to make. And I had to figure out how to live with that and still maintain the relationship. And to me, that became priceless.
That's really well said. I love it. Were you nervous about not using punishments and rewards anymore? Did that make you nervous, or were you?
Totally.
Yeah. Tell me why, because this is a big one. People come in and they think that, well, if I don't have that, what do I have?
Right.
I don't know what to do. Was
that
for you too?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing you teach is the best leverage we have is the relationship. The only influence we have on our kids is who we are as a person, and are we someone who can actually be influential in their life, and that is, they get to choose that. That's kind of scary. So then you have to look at yourself and am I someone they want to be around? Am I someone who they want to be with? Am I friendly? Am I supportive? Am I safe? All those things. And so, yeah, because my brain's always well, there has to be a punishment. They have to learn. It's my job to teach them, right? This is my stewardship, and they need to know. that this is the right, quote unquote, right way. And if I didn't do that, then they're going to, quote unquote, get away with things. And then they weren't going to learn. And
Yeah.
then they're going to take advantage of me. And
Hmm.
honestly, I haven't really found that to be true.
Yeah. There's this link between punishment and learning is
Hmm.
so prominent when we think about parenting. I did a little post on TikTok. My daughter's got me on TikTok now. I have no idea what I'm doing, but she's coaching me. She's my 16-year-old. And she's like, "Got to get you on TikTok, Mom." Anyway, I did this whole thing about this topic, and somebody's like, "Well, then how do you punish?" And the real question was that how do you teach them? It was mind blowing to think that there was another way that
Okay,
would
so
teach them, because punishment is how we teach.
yes,
Like that's how
right.
they learn their lesson, even though we have very little proof to back that up. But that is such a prominent belief.
Because what you teach is when we use punishment, like if I were to put myself in that situation of punishment, I get defensive, I get protective, my learning goes down significantly. And yet we expect our kids, if they're punished, that their learning is wide open. But to
Yes.
learn, you have to feel safe and you have to
Mm-hmm.
feel love. And that creates the best learning environment, which anytime you come in with like the energy of frustration or irritation or disappointment or whatever, your kids pick up on that and then immediately they're going to be
Yes.
shut down, which that's all I've learned from you. I didn't know that before.
You're so good. I'm like, you are quoting the truth here. Yeah, this is what I
This was
teach
not
all
in
day,
any of
every
those other
day.
parenting books except Connect Method Parenting.
Yes, I love it. It's so good. It's interesting when you look at the science, the brain science, the neuroscience, the developmental approach to just the theory of how we developmentally grow and how we respond when we have a threat, a perceived threat. It does indicate the opposite is happening, that the punishments, like you're saying, reduce the learning, not increase it. But this is the message that I want to get out, is like, this is actually the truth.
Right.
So we don't need to be afraid of letting go of punishment. And I want to just clarify too, consequences most of the time are done punitively. I'd say
Hmm.
99% of the
I was
time.
really good at that.
Yeah. We'll say, no, I'm giving a consequence, but it's
Yeah.
done in a punitive way. So it's still just a punishment in the
Counterproductive.
disguise
Yeah.
of the word consequence. But that prevents the learning from happening, exactly what you said. So it's so good. So if anybody's listening and you're afraid of stepping out of that framework, realize it's actually not a framework that works and it's doing the opposite. Share some examples of what has happened as you've implemented Connect Method Parenting, as you've realized, oh, I don't want to put my kids into fight or flight mode because I want them actually to learn and grow and emotionally become more mature.
So I feel
Share.
like I have a really good one that it shows the learning and how the brain stays on when your kids feel safe. So my kids are very creative, and one of my kids and his friends wanted to build a kiln, and I was like, sure, go for it. And kind of let them go, keeping an eye on it. There's right out one of the windows so we could keep an eye. And anyways, they had thought they'd put it out and they left. And I checked on it and I still saw a flame coming out. So and to me, one of the bigger testaments was like, I wasn't even upset when I saw. I was like, oh, we need to take care
So
of this.
good. Yes.
Before, I
This
would
is
have been
just,
like, oh,
yeah.
I would have been like, how could he? What was he thinking? He took advantage of my kindness. Those would have been
Yes.
all of my previous thoughts, right? But I just saw it and I'm like, oh, this is, and I literally remember distinctly thinking, if I get upset about this, his brain will shut off, he will get defensive, and it will turn into a battle, and he won't learn anything from this. Or
So good.
how can I stay calm and help him learn how to make this safe so when he does it in the future, he can actually be safer?
I love that you saw both. Like you could see both paths. So good in your mind. You're like, okay,
I attribute it to working
option.
with you. This
Thank
is
you.
not
Well,
something
you're pretty genius too. But it's like path A or path B. Which one do I want to do?
I've
It's
taken
so
path B so many times to finally get to the point. Progressive failure. Listen to progressive failure. It's
right.
one of my favorite episodes that Andy has done. Gives me so much hope that I have failed so many times that this is the time where my brain's it's like clicking, finally clicking.
Yes.
Anyways, he came right home, so super proud of him. And I was just like, hey, saw some fire still. And immediately was like, well, I put it out, like really defensive. And I was like, it's okay. Like, I'm sure you did. I don't doubt that you didn't do it. And I was like, and you're not in trouble, but there was a flame. So we just need to figure out
Mm-hmm.
what happened. Multiple times he tried to like, but I put it out, trying to be defensive. But before I would have been like, by the third time, I would have been like, well, you didn't. But this
Yeah.
time I was just like, it's okay. Like, I'm sure you did. I have no doubt, but fires can relight themselves. Let's figure out how it happened, you know? And I'm like, just take my phone and do some research and see, what are the safe ways to put out a fire. And what was interesting as he's sitting and looking, I can hear him go, oh. And he's like, you know what we didn't do? We didn't let it burn down to an ash. And I was like, okay, so can you see now why it could have possibly re-caught on fire? And then he keeps reading and then he goes, oh, you know what we didn't do? We didn't take this off and spray it down more. So there's some still dry wood in the back. We only did it in the front. We didn't get in the back. If we'd taken the top off, we would have seen that. I'm like, great. These are so good.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one is like, okay, I could use baking soda and that would put it out. I'm like, awesome. And then now he's learning, he's opening, and now I knew I could actually have a conversation and talk about, okay, and I said, you know what, we're not going to be able to do the kill anymore until we know it can be super safe because we have lots of other kids around and they don't understand that these things are hot. And I'm like, what's your plan to keep it safe? And he's like, well, we're going to do this. I'm like, great, that's a great idea. Why don't you try it? But if it's still hot, you're going to have to figure out something else. He's like, well, those are really expensive if we do this. I'm like, yeah, so you might either have to do that or not. Because I'm like, if someone gets burned, do you know what a third-degree burn is? He's like, no. And I'm like, let me tell you. And this is what would happen. And
So
I
good.
don't want you to experience that. That would feel really bad if one of your siblings got burned. And I mean, like, talking about teaching, that was
Right.
like,
And learning.
yes, which actually happened because I was calm and it wasn't a
Mm-hmm.
problem. I wasn't upset. I feel like my brain, I'm like, knock on wood, don't jinx myself because I'm like, I feel like my brain is finally has enough evidence to see
Mm-hmm.
that staying calm and not and like the natural quote unquote natural consequence, like we have to have limits. Safety's the limit, right? And so I'm
Right.
just like, as long as it can be safe, I'm fine with it. But if we can't do it safe, then we can't do it until we figure it out. And if you have to buy something, and just the other like 3 or 4 days later, he comes to me, he's like, I think we're just gonna have to buy one because we can't make it safe enough. I'm like, okay,
How beautiful. He came to that
right?
conclusion on his own. You didn't have
Yes,
to be the bad guy.
it was
He was like,
amazing. It was like all my
so,
dreams came true.
yes. This is evidence of all the work you've put into to prepare yourself to be in the moment, regulated and calm, and have a story that's actually representative of what's happening in the situation.
So I have plenty of situations where I did not stay calm.
And that's okay too. We don't have to
Yes,
get it right every time. We just
right.
learn and grow and we just keep going.
So there was another time one of my kids decided to take something that wasn't theirs from school
Mm-hmm.
and brought it home, and I knew immediately it wasn't theirs. And I got upset. I was like, because they lied about it, and I was like, oh, don't you lie to me. I know you didn't do it, and I was getting all
Yeah.
on, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, time to leave, time to leave. This is unproductive. And I'm like, I can't even talk about it. And I like went upstairs and I
So
like
good.
did a thought download and I was just like scribbling on the page. All the feelings were coming, and I can't remember if we had just coached, but I do recall your words of like, the next time something happens, don't respond to it right away, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like my
Yeah.
ADHD brain is like, take care of it now or I will forget. And so it was really hard for me. And I just made a decision like, I'm not even going to talk about it, I think, till tomorrow. Like, I'm not even going to address it. And I
Yeah.
think you and I coached on this one that kind of
Yeah.
helped me like figure out how to address it without making it punitive, because like I wanted to punish, right? Like I wanted, for one, for taking, two for lying, two for, you know what I mean? I just
Yeah.
like wanted to like slather on all the punishments. But you helped me. And what ended up happening was I went in the next morning, which was really hard to wait because part of me wants to go and lecture and do all the things. And I think that's another thing too, is we think, oh, if we don't take care of it right away, it's gonna make it worse.
Totally. Yeah.
And
That doesn't work at all. Just to put a plug in there.
yeah,
Wait. Because
waiting.
it's so much easier to deal with a memory than in the moment, visceral
Right.
fight or flight. You're still in the moment of that
Yeah,
reactionary kind of place. So, yeah, we don't have to be afraid to wait. No learning will be lost, just gained, actually. So keep going.
totally.
This is so good. Great
So I
example.
came in the next morning and I was finally at like a place of peace and I wasn't
Yeah.
upset. It wasn't even a problem anymore. And I just sat down. I was like, here's what we're going to do. You need to do X, Y, and Z. And immediately he's like, well, I didn't do it. And I was just like, it's okay. Here's what we're going to do. And I just gave him his options. And he tried to, you know, be like, well, I didn't each time. And I just repeat myself. I'm like, it's okay. Here's what we're going to do. And then, like, miracle of miracles,
Love it.
he like told me the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And even though he
Mm-hmm.
didn't the first several times, he finally told me the truth. And then he picked which option he wanted. And then he took him
Mm-hmm.
back to school. And that was
Mm-hmm.
like the end of it.
Right. So good. The safety you provided. And there was a limit too. You were not okay with this behavior. You're like, that's not okay to bring something home that's not yours. And gave him the space to discover for himself
Yeah,
the
I
morality
think,
of it, the truth of it, where what
right.
really
The
he knew it
very
wasn't okay.
the very fact that he
Yeah.
was finally able to like admit to it to me was a
Mm-hmm.
huge win. Like that
So
was the
big.
success. That was the consequence.
That's what we would have hoped to come out of a punitive consequence that never would, that comes out of the
Right.
connective limit. It's their own recognition of, oh, I did do this. I need to
Right.
make it right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he returned
So
it,
good.
and I told him I was going to follow up to make sure that it actually went through with it and all that. And he did. And I think that's all we decided to do at that point because one thing that's really, really helped me is I always have to ask myself, like, what's going to serve this child? What's actually going to serve them? Is taking more away, is like sometimes serving them is something that's taking away or something like that. But in this situation, I didn't feel like there was anything more I could do other than him owning the fact and then having
Mm-hmm.
to face someone to return it. I felt like those were like the best things that could serve him.
So good. Yeah. I mean, he went through the act of restoration, just making that right again. And you're absolutely right. Sometimes we do need to put a limit in. And I often use the example, if you have a family rule that, you need to get your homework done before you watch TV, like you can hold that limit, and that can be something that serves your family, but it's not a threat. You can't watch TV if you don't do homework kind of a situation. It's more just like, oh, in this kind, compassionate, firm way, like, this is how we do our evening. And so we can't watch TV until you're done with your homework or whatever the example is. But just knowing we need to hold those firm limits, they're very important. But once we step in with the punitive energy, fight or flight happens and no learning comes into play. So much of it is the parents learning to regulate themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that was that surprising as you came in? Because I have a lot of parents that come in and work with me, and they'll say to me, I didn't realize how much of my own work I was going to do. I thought this was all about the kids. And yet it is about the kids, but it's also, how am I showing up to provide
Yeah.
an environment where my kids can thrive? And that does start with us. I think it's great work because our kids are, as you've alluded to, our best teachers. They don't go anywhere. We can't step away from the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us don't want to do that. So we have to confront ourselves and confront what's
Yes.
coming up for us, versus if it was a person or a job, we could just be done with it if we wanted to. But with our kids, we want them in our life. And so they provide us nonstop opportunities to
I would
do our
say
work.
a majority of my thought downloads that I do are help me work on me. It's more revealing of where I'm lacking or what I need to work on than it ever is about my kid.
Right. Because the impact of you showing up differently in a situation, and you've described multiple now, changes everything. Like the ripple effect of how your nervous system is in the moment changes their ability to show up in the moment in a different way as well. Like we give them that gift.
Yeah. I mean,
Beautiful.
it's research based, like you always talk about. Like
I know.
it's mirror neurons, right? And so like
Right.
we are so good as humans that we pick up on other people's, I don't know, vibes, like
Emotions,
emotions.
vibes.
If there is
Yeah.
any inkling, and this is the gift I think of having kids, is because if there's any inkling of irritation or this, our kids will sense it and they will
Mm-hmm.
point it out to us, and it's painful because we want to
Or
think
they
we're
mirror it
really good.
back.
Or that, yeah,
You're like,
that
I
they
don't know.
point it out by mirroring it back.
Yeah. You're like, I don't know why they were so upset. And you're like, well, how are you? Well, I was really upset. It's just
Well, it's like when
okay, well.
you're like, stop yelling, you know?
Right.
Kids
And
are
you're
yelling.
yelling and you yell. Yeah, we mirror them too sometimes. So learning how not to do that. It's so good. You've just done so much self reflection and work to calm those triggers, to get your nervous system regulated. But what's another one that's, maybe to wrap it up, just to share one that you're like, this was so surprising to me, or memorable, or just, I can't believe it happened?
Well, I would say the biggest, I think having lots and lots of younger children who don't know how to regulate and their way of communicating is yelling, hitting, throwing, all those
Right.
things. I would say I remember my daughter, I think she was 4 at the time, and she, I'd set the limit And I knew in my mind, like, I always like have to remind myself, like, it's okay that they're upset about the limit. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay. Of course they're upset about it. Of course they're upset.
Mm-hmm.
And I
So
was
good.
working on seen and heard that you teach. And I was just trying to like see her, like, I see you're upset. It's okay to be upset. I'm here for you. I'm not going to leave you until you're ready. And she literally jumped into my arms and hugged me after I'd
Mm-hmm.
done that. And I was like shocked. It doesn't always work
Yeah.
that way, but in that instance it
Right.
did. And those are just like the little tender moments of just holding space for them to feel their feelings and not getting mad at them for having feelings is what I used to do. Like I want it to stop
Yeah.
because it made me feel so uncomfortable. And that's why I think we have to work on ourselves because we have to get comfortable with the discomfort that's causing
Right.
us. And now my kids cry and I'm like, I get it. We're here. We're going to figure it out and we're going to do, do what we need to do. Like recently, my daughter's kind of been struggling and I remember you talking about moving the body. And
Yeah.
before I would just carry up to her room, but she's getting bigger and it's really hard to carry her to her room. And so now I go and what's really been helping is jumping on the trampoline with her. And then it just helps her shift. And then, it turns into a game. And there were several times in the beginning as I was really practicing this, there would be several times my kids, like after a situation, would just be like, I love you, mom, like out of nowhere,
Yeah.
out of
So
nowhere. And
great.
that never would have happened if I was upset and yelling at them and punishing them and putting them time out and taking their toys away. But because I just let them feel their feelings, like they sensed my love and they would just be like, Mom, I love you. And
Mm.
those are just like, oh, I will do anything for
So
you. So worth it.
so good.
It's worth the
Yeah.
pain of seeing all your faults.
Yeah. Well, it's gonna happen either way. I say it's uncomfortable no matter which way you parent. We might as well choose a way that's productive and
Totally.
has a
And
good
it
return
does
on our
get
investment.
I don't want to jinx myself, but it's so much more enjoyable doing it this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't want to say it's
Yes.
easier. It's definitely like it is getting easier, but only because I'm practicing it more. My brain has more evidence of it. So it's becoming more like second nature for me, which I'm really great. Like I never thought that would happen.
It's beautiful because it can become your default. It's so, so good. So, if you had to summarize the impact that using Connect Method Parenting has had on your life or on your kids or on your family, however you want to classify it, what would you say? How would you describe that?
Life changing.
Life changing. I love it. Oh, I love it because it's just, as a retired nurse, I love the science. So it's just so great to be like, it's scientifically proven. We
Hmm.
figured out how to help people actually implement it and it's changing people's lives. It feels unreal, to be a part of it. It's such an honor. It's not anything I anticipated, but it's like that would be part of my life. But I love seeing the impact that it's having. I mean, on my life too, but then on people that I get to work with. It's just so fun.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
very
So thanks for
grateful
saying that.
to have found it.
Yeah.
It really has. It's changed my relationships. I mean, especially with my kids. And the biggest testament to me in it is one of my kids. I think it helps them be more empathetic towards me when I'm having a hard time because I've had to accept that I am an imperfect human as much as I hate that.
Darn it. I know. I wanted to pretend I wasn't for a lot of
I
years.
really wanted to be perfect and not make any mistakes and
Yeah.
figure it out and reach the goal. What we say is like, make it like,
Yeah. I want to finish, like reach that.
yeah.
I want to get there to the destination and
Yeah,
then I'm
like
done.
I was like, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
be it and then it's over. And I'm just like, perfect. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just not the reality of it. And that took me a long time to like come to peace with. But in so
Mm-hmm.
doing it, one time I was having a hard time and I was like crying upstairs about something. And one of my kids wrote on the fridge, like, I love Christmas and I love mom. And
Oh.
that just like made it so much better. And it was so touching. And the thing that like made it mean so much more to me was because I didn't have to guilt trip that out of my kid. I didn't have to be like, you don't appreciate me. I didn't have to say any of that. Like, they just did that on their own, which to me meant 10 times more, than anything
Yeah.
else in the world. And to me, those are just little reminders of like how focusing on the relationship trumps everything else.
Everything. I always say connection can do what correction never really can. We think
Amen.
it can, but
Amen,
it can't.
sister.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
true.
Amen. If you could go back in time and your old version of yourself could see that you are where you are now, do you think she would be surprised?
Think it'd be like almost disbelief, like, oh, it does work? Like, I didn't know if it would. I hoped
Yeah.
it would, but it did? Okay. Like,
It
good.
worked. It worked. Let's do vice versa because I think that's the way you normally say it, but my brain did the other way. Like, what do you think you would tell yourself when you were
Oh,
back
back
before
then,
you
what
did
I
it,
know
and you,
now, and like, I would
yeah,
probably
like,
just give myself a hug and just be like, be so much more kinder to myself and
mm,
just so
I
much
love that.
more grace. And just, I was so hard on myself. And like, I just remember we had this like pivotal conversation. And I feel like that, like, when we had this conversation and you said to me, until you learn to love yourself, you will not be able to make the changes you need to make. And I was just like,
Yeah.
and I think that's the gift of having kids, right? Because I will do things for my kids that I wouldn't do for myself. And if I knew having to love myself was what I had to do so I could be a better mom, then dang it, I'm going to love myself. Like,
Yes. That
I
was
just,
my experience too. That was the only reason I would give myself permission to love myself.
hmm
Otherwise, I couldn't believe that was a worthy thing to
yeah.
do because all I saw were all my flaws and I thought that was irresponsible. But
hmm
if that was the gateway to loving my kids more, then I had to figure out how to do it.
I feel like that was
Yeah.
game changing for me.
What shifted after that? I mean, you maybe the commitment, but what else?
I think I started finally being kind. Like, that's when I shifted out
Mm,
of shame, like where I would, when I would make a mistake, instead of going into like, what's wrong with you? Why would you do that? Like, those would be my thoughts.
yeah.
Like, that I started practicing. One of my favorite thoughts was like, you're so relatable to your
I
kids.
love it. I remember we've talked about that quite a bit, but the reality of how cool it is that,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm so relatable. Like, that just really gave me a lot of peace instead of being hard on myself, of just
Mm-hmm.
giving myself more grace.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I had done it perfect, like, my kids need to see me make mistakes so they can see me repair, they can see me keep trying, and that makes me more relatable to them because they're going to make mistakes and they're going to have to learn to repair. And they do it. What's funny is like when I start getting overwhelmed or my kids can like sense I'm like getting upset, they'll be like, "Take some deep breaths, mom."
My kids do that too. And it's so beautiful that they can do that for us since we've done that to them and taught them how
Right.
to do it and not
Yeah.
made them wrong for feeling big emotions. So then they don't, yeah, they get to do that for us. It's such a beautiful cycle.
Anyways, I
So,
love the work you're doing. I really believe in it.
ah,
Thank you for being in my
thank
life.
you're so sweet. I love it too. So, what would you tell somebody who was in the same situation you are? Maybe they're listening to this and they're, not believing it's possible. They're wondering if they could actually make the shift. They're not sure what this work entails, because there is a lot of steps to it's not hard. We take you step by step through the whole thing, but it is new, just like anything, learning a new
Yeah,
sport. There's things you have to learn that you don't know. But what would
right.
you tell that mom or dad that's wondering, is this going to work for me? I mean, it's great it worked for you, but maybe you're the unicorn.
Right. It's worth trying. What do you have to lose? You've tried all the other things, they didn't work. Why not try this? And like, I think the biggest thing is giving yourself time to fail. Like, that is
Mm,
part of the process. That was really hard for me because I just would fail so frequently. But again, progressive failure. Listen to Andy's episode.
yeah, yeah.
It's
So
like,
good. When we can make our failure productive and
yeah, then they're
learn
not
from it.
failures. What I love is the lessons I'm learning for myself. I'm able to share that with my kids. So today my daughter was drawing and her first drawing, she's like, it's so bad. I'm like, yeah, but think if you drew that 10 more times, how much better is your 10th one going to be? Like, of course your first one's bad. It's the first time you ever did it. And then every time you do it, you're going to get a little bit better. And she drew it 5 times today. And she
Really?
was like, "Look how good this is." I'm like, "That's it. That's just the process. It's just the process of growth is doing it over and failing, and then learning and learn. You know what I mean? It's just like failing,
Yes.
learning, failing, learning, failing, learning. That is the process. And I think for some reason we feel like it should be easy or we should get it right the first time. And when we give that grace to ourselves, then we can extend that to our kids and it makes it so much more enjoyable to parent because the reality is your kids are going to screw up a lot because they're growing, you know?
Because we're humans, like all of us.
Yes.
We're just humans. Yeah. That's such a beautiful lesson. I love how you said that. It's definitely part of life. I don't know anybody who hasn't, messed up pretty big in their life. I haven't met a perfect person. I don't know about you. So it doesn't
Yeah, I
seem
haven't
that
either.
that's like really the way we're supposed to live here. So it's so good to embrace it. I love saying there's no such thing as failure as long as we learn and grow. That's my
Yeah.
motto. And that took me forever to learn because I'm a recovering perfectionist. And so that was tricky. I had to really do the work.
I would say do it for a year. Like give yourself a year. Like anything in life. You know, if you
Mm,
want to see the change you want to see, like just be like, I'm going to commit to this for a year. What would happen? get curious. Like, what would happen if I just worked on this for a year and I get coached once a week? Focus on one goal and, you know, life changing.
Yeah.
It's totally worth it.
Life changing. Yeah. Oh, this is so good. What's your next big parenting goal, do you think? I'm just curious. What's on the horizons?
One that I'm still trying to implement is I just really want to get better at having more intentional one-on-one time. That's been kind of a
Mm,
struggle, just managing like the belief I have that there's not enough time.
yes.
And
Such a good.
so just working on more connective routines and just getting more solid in them. Sometimes I'm
hmm
always amazed, like a day will go by and I'm like, did I look at my kid in the eye today? Did I even like see
Mm,
them? You know?
yeah.
So that's probably one that it's more of a logistics thing. Like, how do I
With
incorporate
so
that?
many.
Hmm.
Yeah, with so many. I get it. Yeah. And I love that you brought that up because we didn't really talk about the power of intentionally investing or having a connection plan. So big because we can live in the same home, but not really be present in the
Right.
same way. And that's good. We need to be taking them to their practices and making dinner and having those conversations, but also intentionally connecting in the way you're talking about is so good. And that's something we work on a lot in there. And I love that you said give yourself time because we do have to create a new neural pathway.
Right.
But the lovely part about Connect Method Parenting is that it's scientifically proven and that it's just step by step. It's like, here's the 3 strategies. We're just going to work on these things. And there's different nuances and ways to explore them and implement them. But it's simple. I wouldn't say it's easy because
Yeah.
anything new
It's
that we
definitely
do,
not easy.
it's not going to be a piece of cake, but it's also nothing worth doing is easy,
Right.
so it would be weird if it was. So good. Anything else you want to share before we wrap up? It's been such a
Um,
fun conversation, reviewing all your wins and all of the things that are.
I wish we had like I'm sure we have a recording of us like starting together and I'm like, like
Oh my
our
gosh, that would be
previous
so
calls.
fun. We do. I should have to look back. We should look at that. That would be really fun. Just the progress is huge.
Yeah.
Huge. Yeah, massive to see where you started and where you are now and just
Well, and
how different things are.
I think I want to end with this is we all start out wanting to like change our kids or fix the kids, but in like I would say the biggest gift I've got out of this is like I am becoming more of the person I've always dreamed of being. I feel like I'm actually becoming that now. Like whereas before that felt so impossible, like when you make your vision boards or you're writing, I'm like, I want to be patient, I want to be this, I want to be this. And I feel like I'm actually becoming that. And that is my kids still do the things they do, but I'm becoming better. And that
Mm-hmm.
to me is like gives me so much peace
Mm.
because by me getting better, it doesn't matter what happens with my kids because I'm finally at a place where I'm going to love them no matter what. And I'm proud of them because they're my kids and they are the best gifts to me. And I just remember you making this comment to me one time, asking me, like, do you want to be on this journey with them? And that was like really eye opening of like, I want to be the kind of person who can go on any journey with my kid, whether it's even if it's not the one I would want for them. I don't want to judge them through that. And I want to love them through that. Like, I want to be there for them. And I feel like
Mm.
doing this work is actually like, has helped me change, look at myself in the eye, love myself better, and actually becoming a better person.
Love that. It's so good. Is it Gandhi that said, be the change you want to see in the world? Which
Yeah.
I think is so point on to what you're saying is it starts with us and then we send out a different,
But I would say,
whether
like,
you,
I didn't know how to do that before I did this
mm,
work. I literally had that quote on my wall, be the change you want to see. And I'm like, I just kept trying to do it through like vision boards and like writing positive affirmations, but you have to do the work. And
yeah,
I think that is where you see the most growth is doing that
mm-hmm,
work. And it's like you said, it's not easy, but it's
right.
actually not hard either.
It's hard if you don't do it. So you
It's
might as well
hard.
do the
Yeah,
hard that
exactly.
works.
The work is getting on a phone call. The work is writing things down. The work is looking at what
Your
is.
thoughts.
And that's
Yeah.
where you come into play. And that's what your program offers people is that commitment to themselves to look and you help them see what they can't see. And then they go and do the work. And that's, the gift too.
We iterate and implement. Yeah. Because the knowledge is one thing, but the doing is another. That's why
Totally.
so many of us are like, I know better. And that's true, but can you do better? And that's where I had my own journey of figuring out how to implement. And now I love that I get to help people who resonate with the message of Connect Method Parenting, but aren't sure how to do it. and need that help to bridge that gap.
Yeah,
That's
it's
what we
like
do.
you've paved the way, and I've seen your program evolve and change, and I feel like what you have right now is so spot on, and I just feel like it's
Oh,
so
you're so
good.
great.
I just love how you're so committed to helping people change, and you keep changing yourself to provide the best possible way for them to reach their goals.
Oh,
You
thank
guys
you.
won't get a better
Thank
coach than
you.
Andy. Trust me, I've worked with lots of coaches.
Oh, you're so sweet. I am committed. I don't know, for better or worse. This is my mission. I love that. It's so good. And thank you for sharing that and your honest opinion. And I don't think my program will ever stop changing because I'm always taking feedback, learning more things. And it's because my goal is how can I make this as simple and as doable, as clear as possible to take people from point A to point B as quickly as we humanly can. And sometimes we just have to wait for those darn neural pathways to change. They take a little bit of time, and I have no control over that. If I could change that, I would, but that's not in my control. We just have to work with the brains and the bodies we have, but as quickly as our bodies will respond, that's my goal. So thank you so much. I really appreciate having you share a glimpse of what it looks like to do Connect Method parenting in real life, in situations that are just with our kids. They're a little bit messy and they don't fit a perfect formula, but yet Connect Method parenting is adaptable to all of that. And I love seeing how you've applied it to your 2 sets of twins. Most people are going to just be floored by that. Plus the other ones you have in there too. Just a lot of really great dynamics to see how it works in any situation. So thank you so much. Thanks for letting us see you. Yeah, and a little into your life. So I totally appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thank you so much, Mary, for joining me today on the podcast and sharing that wisdom and inspiring us all. So what did you guys think? Wasn't that so amazing? All right. Until then, have an amazing time. Go connect your face off with your kids, and I'll talk to you guys soon. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, come check out League, my Connect Method parenting coaching program, where we take this material and we apply it using my proven formula. Head over to cmp.works/join.